Number 6. Little Christian meets with Worldly. Not very far from the city of destruction, there was a hill, and beyond the hill, a little village. In this village lived a number of animals who called themselves the king's servants and pretended to love him, although they did not really care about anything but their own pleasure. They had been afraid to stay in the city because of all the strangers had told them, but they did not wish to have the trouble of going to the king's country, so they built houses and made fields and gardens for themselves beyond the hill and fancied in that place they were safe. A young mink from the village, whose name was Worldly, happened to be strutting across the plain on the very day Little Christian began his journey. Worldly knew Little Christian by sight, because the animals from the village often went into the city to visit their old friends, and when Worldly saw the little rabbit coming, he wondered what Christian was doing so far from home. "Is that you, Little Christian?" he said. "You're a long way from home." Worldly was a fine-looking mink, and Little Christian felt pleased to be noticed by him, so he answered at once. "I'm going to the narrow gate." "The narrow gate? What for?" "To get rid of my burden." "Oh, of course," replied Worldly. "I know those burdens are tiresome things. It isn't everybody who can feel them, but when you do feel them, there is no comfort till they're gone." Little Christian was surprised to hear Worldly speak this way, for the boys and girls in the city had all laughed at him and declared his burden was only imaginary. "I shall not have to carry it much longer. I'm making haste to the narrow gate." "What put it in your head to go there?" asked Worldly. "I met a very owl named Evangelist, and he told me to go." Worldly laughed. "He may be very kind, but he's stupid. I know him. Look here, Little Christian. I can tell you a much better way of losing your burden. Don't trouble yourself to go on the journey. You see, I know exactly what Evangelist said. He tells everyone that. You have been in the horrible slough already, and if you go through the narrow gate, you will find worse troubles than that. There's beasts and all sorts of danger, and very likely die of hunger." "But my burden is so heavy," sighed Little Christian. "I must get rid of it, and Evangelist said that was the best way." "Well, of course, you can do as you like," replied Worldly. "But I think you're very silly. How did you ever know you had a burden at all?" "I read it in the King's book that everyone has a burden." "I thought so. That book is very well for clever grown-up creatures, but little rabbits like you can't understand it. You read it, and you don't know what it means, and you get your head full of nonsense. Now, I'll tell you what you do. I wouldn't go back to the city because you always feel frightened, and it really isn't a nice place to live. If I were you, I'd go around the hill of the village. I have some friends living in the first house, and if you tell them I sent you, they'll take you in and be kind. Then, in a few days, you'll forget all about your burden, and I don't suppose you'll ever feel it again." Little Christian felt puzzled. Worldly spoke so kindly he could scarcely help believing what he said, and he thought it would be nice to live near his old home and be able to see Christian sometimes. "You can't do it better than take my advice," continued Worldly. "Never mind, Evangelist. That's the way, past the hill. You can't make mistake the house, because it's the first you come to." Then he put his hands in his pockets and strutted off, whistling a merry tune, and Little Christian forgot all about the king and his message and turned away from their narrow gate to the village beyond the hill.